Hi, everybody, and welcome to this MAPP webinar. This is Dan Barry with the Modeling, Analysis, Predictions, and Projections team in the Climate Program Office. Thanks, everybody, for joining. I'm joined in the room here by Rita, who's the director of the MAPP program, and Heather Archambault, who is also a program manager. And also in the MAPP team are Will Chong and Ali Stevens. They're not here today, but they provide assistance with the program. They help us manage all of the grants and awards and also do a lot of great communications work via climate.gov and the CPO website. So I'm going to give a brief overview of this webinar to begin. This webinar is intended to help inform the community about the MAPP program and also to discuss the FY17, the fiscal year 2017 competitions, which were just published Tuesday of this week. So we're going to start with Rita giving an overview of the MAPP program and the research areas that we are engaged with and some of the other activities that we pursue related to those research activities. Heather and I are going to talk about the two competitions, and then Heather and I are also going to talk about the proposal process, the LOI process, and some informal tips on how to apply to the program and to improve your proposals. We are hopefully going to have time for a good Q&A at the end of this. We ask that you pose general interest questions to us. Please don't ask us if a particular idea is relevant to the competition. That's the point of the LOI process. But general interest questions, if you think more than just yourself would be interested in the question, please do go ahead and ask it. We are going to do questions via the chat feature in WebEx. So I actually want everyone to just take one moment to find the chat feature in WebEx. You can get it in the menu bars at the top, or you should have a little green icon at the top that says you're viewing my desktop or my monitor. If you go up to that, you'll find the chat feature. I want you to open that and just send me a message and say hi, just so I know that you're awake. We haven't already put you to sleep, and to see that you know how to use the chat feature. So please go ahead and do that. I see a bunch of people saying hi, so some people are paying attention, which is wonderful. And you will get first dibs on questions, I guess. So the way we'll do this is you can just submit questions as they come to mind as we go along in the webinar. If you think we might address it as we go along, there's going to be a lot of content, so you might want to hold on to it and just see if we do cover it. But we will answer the questions in first come, first served order, so feel free to float one as it comes to mind. And we are not going to reveal the ID of the questioners. It's funny, it says id. Well, your id might become clear, I guess, as we read the question. But we will not reveal your ID. So I already mentioned who's on the line here. We have Rita, myself, and Heather. And then Diane Brown, who works for the Administrative Services Division, should also be joining us on this call. And she is responsible for publishing the FFO and a lot of the technical and budgetary grants processes, so she can answer questions on those topics. So next up is Rita, and here's your first slide. So go ahead, Rita.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to give the MAPP program overview. It's basically a MAPP 101 type of thing, and I am the MAPP program director. So if you want to go to the next slide. So first, what is the MAPP program? How does it fit in NOAA? So the MAPP program is part of the Climate Program Office, which is an office, part of the Office of Oceanic and Atmospheric Research, that's OAR, and that's sort of a research line office in NOAA. And the Climate Program Office has three main research areas: observing system, climate monitoring and data stewardship, informing decisions, and then understanding and modeling. And the MAPP program sits under the understanding and modeling area, and it is a competitive grants program at the interface between earth sciences and services. So our mission. So within the big NOAA mission, our mission is to enhance the nation's capability to understand and predict natural variability and changes in Earth's climate system. So we support research, we support transition of research to applications and operations, and importantly, engagement activities that focus on the development, integration, and application of Earth system models and analysis. We rely on strong partnerships within NOAA, with other line offices outside of OAR, within OAR, with other agency programs as part of the USGCRP, that's the U.S. Global Change Research Program, and U.S. Climber, and also the National Earth System Prediction Capability Program, that's ESPC, for those of you who are familiar with it. And what we do, our specific role is really to engage the external community on NOAA's research teams to advance NOAA's mission and expanding NOAA's internal research capabilities. And we also work to really facilitate internal NOAA interactions of OER versus the various service line offices that enhance coordination of research. Next slide. So all MAPP-supported research is mission-driven, and that's because NOAA is a science-based service agency. So our grant competitions fund research and transition work to help support NOAA's service requirements. And we basically follow the so-called NOAA R&D funnel business model, and you can see a graphic here trying to illustrate what this is on the right. So the idea is that you would have NOAA's mission requirements, the service line offices having needs to fulfill the NOAA mission, and this would drive research that's, from the most foundational general research and development that's up at the top of this funnel, engaging research partners, and then more mission-oriented research and development going down this funnel. And then more specifically, some science and technology transition work that's basically testing new methodologies, new models, et cetera, as part of Deathbed, and then all the way to actually having new operational systems and services development and implementation. And the idea is that you would have, the more foundational research taking maybe years to get, trickle down to more practical applications and finally to services. And MAPP sits pretty much at the middle of this research funnel, so we do both mission-oriented research and development as well as transition work. And all our research proposals come to MAPP through the annual CPO federal funding opportunities, such as the one we're going to be discussing soon. So our research focus areas, these are our main areas. So prediction, Earth system and climate prediction weeks to decades, again in support of NOAA's operational forecasts, climate analysis research, including data simulation, climate Earth system modeling, and research on drought and other applications. On drought, we have a long-term partnership with NIDIS, that's the National Integrated Drought Information System. And if you want to learn more about, what kind of grants and projects we've funded over the past 5 years, you can go to our website, and you can visit the website. It's listed there, and you can find all about what we have funded. And we support these research areas via our grant competitions that are open to all who are eligible, as specified in the SFO. In these various areas that we focus on, we organize our investigators in task forces, what we call task forces. Basically, these are working groups of funding investigators that focus on a particular topic that's identified as part of the MAPP grant competitions. And so these are generally have the duration of the project, so typically 3 years. And we've had a number of these task forces over the years. Currently, we are planning a new sort of subseasonal to seasonal prediction task force starting this fall, focusing on subseasonal to seasonal prediction. We just finished and did a climate analysis task force. We have a climate model development task force that's helping to support the development of NCEP's new unified couple models. And then we have a drought task force that's now in its second cycle. Again, it works closely with NIDIS. And then we have currently a model diagnostics task force that focuses on developing and implementing process-level diagnostics in support of the improvement of NOAA models that are underpinning climate projections, which is another of our key focus areas. I think I forgot to mention that before. So moving on. So I mentioned we have, importantly, transition work going on in our program. The climate testbed is a main sort of vehicle for transitioning research into weather service operations. We also do transition via other means, especially for drought. So the climate testbed goal is to advance operational climate monitoring, models, and prediction capabilities and accelerate this transition of research into operations. And it is a joint effort between the MAPP program and NCEP. And it's really meant to foster this service science link between NOAA and the broader scientific community. And in practice, it means that we have calls focused on selecting projects that are suitable for this type of work that engage an investigator in the external community and an NCEP co-investigator. And so we've had many projects over the years. Recently, as an example, I can mention the project that had as an outcome the development of the North American Multi-Model Ensemble, NMME. This has been developed with the project that went on for a few years, and it resulted in what is now a new operational weather service system for seasonal forecasts. And here you can see the NCEP CFS model forecast scale and how it compares with the new sort of set of multi-models NMME forecast scale. So I'm really not going to give you too much in terms of specifics of the projects. I mean, this 101 is really meant to give you a context for the competitions we have this year. So I just give you this slide in terms of giving you a sense of the breadth of the program since it started in 2011. We had annually about 120 investigators engaged in our projects as part of generally about 4 task forces a year. That's what we have ongoing right now, and 80+ ongoing projects. We typically have about 300 publications per year. Since the beginning of the program, we have already organized 4 special issues and collections in leading academic journals. We have several transition of research into operations or applications every year. We dedicate a lot of effort in sustaining engagement and communication and outreach, and this includes a webinar series that includes this webinar. And it's currently in its 5th year, and we have had 3,000 attendees so far. And we also have a quarterly newsletter, which you may be interested in. If you're interested, you can go to our website and just sign up for it. And we also have, to date, 77 community reports from MAPP, organized workshops, and other activities that are informing NOAA activities and plans. And to close, just one highlight, which is sort of water and drought research. Through the Drought Task Force, our program supports drought monitoring, understanding, modeling and prediction research and transition, importantly in partnership with NIAS. So just as examples, I mean, we have the Drought Task Force has recently focused on understanding the California drought and has several publications and a community report on this, you see here. And there's a lot of research on improved modeling tools, monitoring, and forecast systems for drought. Here I'm highlighting the North American Land Data Simulation System, NLDAT, that's currently is a new operational tool for drought monitoring that's used at NCEP, and also the SPI, the Standard Precipitation Index tool for drought monitoring and prediction. And to continue this effort on water and drought research, we are now having a new opportunity as part of the 2017 competition on advancing drought understanding, monitoring, and prediction that Dan is going to talk about. I think that's all I want to say. Dan?
Okay, great. Thanks, Rita.
Thank you.
Okay, so in the second part of this webinar, we're going to get into the competitions and how to apply for the competitions, some general information about the FFO. So I'll start this off and then pass it over to Heather in a couple slides. Our fiscal year 2017 announcement, as I mentioned, it went out on Tuesday, and the Climate Program Office issues one federal funding opportunity, normally issues one federal funding opportunity per year, which covers all of the programs in the office. We all kind of go in together on the federal funding opportunity. And the FFO is available on grants.gov, which is the portal for you or your institution to apply to the federal funding opportunity. You can find the FFO there and materials and forms that you need to submit in order to complete an application. There's also a lot of other information about additional requirements for applying for federal funding on grants.gov. On the CPO website, you'll find both the FFO as well as information sheets for each program. So the MAPP information sheet is posted on that site. It provides a few pages of additional information. It really fleshes out what we're looking for in the competitions and additional requirements that we have as a program for proposals that you submit in response to the MAPP solicitation. So the information sheet is at least as important as the federal funding opportunity, and you should pay, significant attention to both documents. Deadlines for our competitions, we have different deadlines than the office. I want to note that in case anyone on the line is going to apply to more than one program opportunity at CPO. MAPP's deadlines are August 26th for the letters of intent and October 31st for full applications. This gives a small amount of extra time for MAPP proposers to get their LOIs and their proposals together. We have two competitions this year, as Rita mentioned. One is on drought and one is on a variety of marine prediction efforts. And your proposal should target or must target only one of these two competitions, and you should clearly indicate which one on both your letter of intent as well as your proposal. So what I'm going to do now is talk a little bit about the drought competition, which I'm managing this year, this cycle, and then I'll pass it over to Heather to talk about the other competitions. So we are soliciting new proposals in 5 technical areas of drought research, and I'm going to go through each of the 5 areas. They're up on the screen here. I'll give a little bit more detail from the information sheet on each of these areas. The first area is focused on understanding of drought, and in particular, we're interested in sources of predictability for predicting drought, and these should be on subseasonal to interannual timescales. In the Climate Program Office, we don't focus on weather timescales, that timescales less than 2 weeks, and this competition is not targeting decadal or longer timescales. And in terms of predictability, we're interested in proposals that focus on the role of atmospheric, oceanic, and land processes and variability, as well as the way in which those processes interact with each other in a coupled fashion, and how they influence the predictability of drought over the United States and North America. In addition, that you can focus on the role of temperature, evapotranspiration, and water management practices and how they affect drought. And because we are a modeling-oriented program, we would like to see proposals that examine predictability sources in the context of modeling and prediction systems. In particular, because we are a NOAA grants program, we're interested in individuals working with NOAA models, although that is not an exclusive requirement, but it certainly is desirable. The second research area is focused on modeling improvements and specifically improving the ability to simulate drought and related factors, including groundwater, snowpack, and human management. This can be through the introduction or development of new model processes, which are focused, again, hopefully on NOAA operational systems potentially. We would like the context for these model developments to be in the context of the state-of-the-art modeling and prediction systems that we have at NOAA. The third area is to advance drought monitoring capabilities and systems, and this can include the Drought Monitor and the North American Land Data Assimilation System. And some of the foci are to improve snowpack, stream flow, groundwater, and soil moisture representation in the monitoring systems. In addition, integrating new data sources to provide a better, more complete, homogeneous view of the hydrological system for North America. And we would like to focus on this to be in the context of operational systems in particular, advancing operational monitoring systems. A couple other foci areas in the monitoring area of the call are on the human forcing of droughts, as well as the representation of vegetation in monitoring systems and improving those. The fourth area is to advance prediction systems and outlooks that are produced by NOAA and its partners. These can also be related to the NIDIS drought early warning system efforts. And some of the areas that you may want to focus on here are improvements in the initialization of the prediction systems and forecasts, multi-model ensemble techniques, post-processing techniques on existing forecast data from NOAA systems or from multi-model systems, hybrid statistical dynamical approaches to prediction, and also increasing the resolution of prediction systems. The final area, the fifth area, is focused on new products. So national scale monitoring and forecast products that build off of existing products and systems related to drought. For example, products that are in the Drought Monitor or are issued by the Climate Prediction Center are examples. So those are the technical areas. In terms of more of the logistical or proposal type questions, this slide is getting into the types of proposals that we're soliciting specifically. The first, these are traditional types of proposals, individual proposals that address one or more of those 5 research areas. These proposals could focus on a component of one of those areas, could focus on a whole area, could focus on multiple areas. However you would like to tackle a particular problem and address the call, that's really up to you. I do want to say by individual proposals, I don't mean from one person. These can be team proposals. You could have a group of investigators on these proposals. It does not have to be a single investigator. But these are kind of standard proposals that you're probably familiar with from our program if you have submitted to the MAPP program before. And in these proposals, we would like people to identify the relationship that you expect to have with the Drought Task Force, as well as contributions you'll make to the Drought Task Force. I should mention, Rita mentioned the Drought Task Force, which is ongoing in its second phase. When these new projects are funded, we'll start a third phase of the Drought Task Force with new leadership. It'll have new members according to who gets funded from this competition, and we would like it if these individual proposals identify how you expect to contribute. The second type of proposal is a team proposal. So this is a larger proposal, would have more components. It has a larger funding level, as I'll get to at the bottom of the slide. And the idea here, this is a new type of proposal that we have solicited in other research areas, not the drought area, over the last couple of years. And the idea here is to essentially lead both the technical and the infrastructural elements of the Drought Task Force. So in particular, we would like this group to basically devise and propose a framework and infrastructure platform to integrate the research proposals, the individual research proposals, as part of the coordinated Drought Task Force activities. And we also, at a high level, would like this proposal to address the scientific elements that were described on the previous slide, so those 5 areas. And again, can focus on as many of them as is suitable to the team that proposes, although we would expect that they would cover a pretty large array of the research questions that are raised by the call. In terms of the framework and leadership for the task force, we would like this group to propose efforts to synthesize new outcomes from research and understanding of predictability sources and how they relate to drought. And there are some examples of how to do that in the information sheet. There could be publications and journal articles that enable collaboration between researchers and the task force, or other products that help integrate the knowledge and research of the task force. We would like for this team proposal to think about integrating new understanding of predictability into forecasts of opportunity and assess forecast uncertainties also. This is something the Drought Task Force has done in the past, and we would like that to be a formalized element of this team proposal. In addition, it's really important to us, especially as part of a mission-driven agency, to be tracking the impact that research has on capabilities. And the previous drought task forces have thought about metrics and assessment protocols for how research projects impact capabilities. We have a report on that that's available on our website, and Rita showed a picture of the cover. And this is a really important element of our research program, and we would like the team proposal to address how to go about that. And that could be using the existing Drought Task Force Assessment Protocol, which is linked in the information sheet. It could be, further development of that protocol, but we would like there to be a unified approach across the Drought Task Force to doing this, and the team would lead that unified approach. In addition, on the infrastructure side, there may be the necessity to share observational model and prediction data, and so this team should think about the type of infrastructure, including data sharing through the internet and other networks that would enable investigators throughout the task force to take advantage of coordinated modeling experiments or new observational data sets, that sort of thing. This doesn't have to be a huge, extensive archive capability, but enough of a capability to be able to share data for collaboration across the task force. And then finally, narrative reports. The task forces in the past have looked at ongoing or historical events as a way to unify some of the research activities and understanding of predictability and the causes of some droughts in the United States and North America. And we would like the team to think about leading efforts like that as they come up. The final ask for the team proposal is that they think about how to link into international efforts such as the GDIS. As appropriate, it's not necessarily doing actual research work to build out the GDIS, but thinking about how to link out from the task force and the national drought research effort into international efforts such as GDIS. Just a few more things on this. The metrics, again, and benchmarks for improvements that are brought by research projects are very important, and all of the investigators on either individual or team proposals should think about that and include that in their proposals. You can think about NCEP metrics, which there's a document available via the information sheet you can look at for the assessment protocol that I've already mentioned. The project should have a nationally relevant scope, but can focus on regional issues, especially related to the United Drought early warning systems. We are not a large enough funding program to fund the full range of regional work that I'm sure investigators would want to complete, so there should be some national relevance of all of the projects that are proposed. The project should be focused in a sub-seasonal and interannual timescale timeframe, and should consider multi-model and multi-system context, especially in the context of monitoring and prediction efforts. And then finally, we do like to see links with NOAA operational centers and laboratories, including NCEP, the operational centers, and the new National Water Center, NOAA National Water Center, also NITIS, and as I mentioned a few times, the drought early warning systems that NITIS is organizing. Rita mentioned transition. Transition is very important in NOAA right now and also to the MAPP program. Projects that come in through the drought call do not have to have a transition component. However, if there is the ability or the thought that some technique or product or modeling scheme may be mature enough by the end of the project to transition, we would like that to be called out in the proposal and give us some kind of brief transition plan. It's also good if it's going to be an operational transition to have an NCEP or other NOAA operational collaborator on the proposal, although these are not requirements, they're just recommendations. So the two types of proposals, type 1 proposals are funded for 3 years at a level of up to $170,000 per year across the whole team. Type 2 proposals are funded also for 3 years at a level of $600,000 per year across the team, and that should include the data management costs in type 2 proposals. We will only fund one type 2 proposal, but we encourage multiple leadership proposals under the type 2 category. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about the drought competition. Again, if you have questions along the way, please just start submitting them via the chat function. I know a few people used the Q&A function. That is actually different from the chat function, and we're going to try to focus on the chat function because it's a little bit easier to use from our end. So please try to find that function and send it via chat messages. Okay, so I'm going to hand it over to Heather now. Heather's going to go through the second competition that we have in the FY17 FFO.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Okay, so the second competition that MAPP is holding for this year, fiscal year 2017, is on research to explore seasonal prediction of coastal high water levels and changing living marine resources. So this is something the MAPP program is doing in partnership with the Fisheries Line Office of NOAA, specifically the Office of Science and Technology and Fisheries. And the idea is to solicit team and individual exploratory research projects that use climate and Earth system models to help advance seasonal predictions. And that's for two topical areas. The first is coastal high water levels, and the second is living marine resources. And the focus of this, in terms of timescale, is on the seasonal timescale. We're looking for to advance prediction at seasonal lead times, but this could also extend to sub-seasonal or interannual lead times if this is well justified by the sources of predictability and the proposed methodologies of the projects. And so the idea is that the outcomes of these research projects can provide foundational elements of emergent national information systems that are intended to increase the resiliency of coastal communities and economies. Okay, so there are 3 main research objectives in each of the above 2 topical areas. So the first is to explore how selected modes of climate or ocean variability relate to seasonal variations in fields such as sea level height and ocean temperature that are of primary relevance to predictability for the topical areas of the call. And to evaluate the seasonal prediction of these modes using climate or Earth system prediction systems. And for this objective, we specifically encourage a focus on the influence of the prediction skill or how that prediction skill is influenced by how key ocean model processes and configurations are represented in the model. For example, river discharge, the ocean lid, model resolution, and how the model components are initialized. So for the second objective is to construct and evaluate a prototype ensemble seasonal prediction system for coastal high water levels or living marine resources, and this is at the national scale. And prediction systems should build on state-of-the-art climate or Earth system prediction systems that have an established capacity to capture key sources of predictability for application-relevant fields. And by application-relevant fields, that's what I referred to in Objective 1, so for example, ocean temperature or sea surface height. And as part of the second objective, there should be a comprehensive strategy that's proposed for the initialization, the coupling, ensemble generation, and the validation of the probabilistic prediction system prototype. And the validation of the system should include a plan to leverage observational data from multiple sources and data sets so that it's possible to rigorously verify the predictions. And the choice of predict bands should be justified based on established user needs. Okay, so the final objective targeted by this call is to develop and evaluate experimental probabilistic-based prediction products that are tailored to the needs of either the National Ocean Service or National Marine Fisheries Service within NOAA as appropriate based on the topical area being focused on. And these types of products can be based on dynamical, statistical, or hybrid dynamical statistical prediction methods, and they can be either national or regional in their scale. And the products must include measures of uncertainty and be rigorously evaluated for statistically significant skill. And to do this, long-term hindcasts are required, and probabilistic skill metrics should be used. Okay, so if we go to the next. Oh, I'm controlling this, sorry. Okay, so the next part, so those are the 3 main objectives. So there's 2 types of proposals that can be submitted, and those are individual proposals. Dan already discussed what's meant by individual proposals. And for those should either target objectives 1 or 3 here, not the second one, since that's something that's much more appropriate for a team proposal. So that brings us to the second proposal, team proposal, and that's meant to be a comprehensive proposal that addresses all 3 areas. So that is to constitute the framework for a prototype integrated seasonal prediction system. And as part of the team proposal, the team proposal should provide plans for close collaboration and coordination with the National Ocean Service or fisheries as appropriate based on the targeted topical area. And as part of the team proposal, so all the PIs supported from this call and led by the team proposal PIs, or they will provide leadership. They will be working together as part of the new Ocean Prediction Task Force. So there are 2 types of proposals. The type 1, the individual proposals, the funding amounts that can be requested are up to $170,000 per year for 3 years. The type 2 proposals are up to $600,000 per year for 3 years. And I'll note that if there is a team proposal that can cover both topical areas, both prediction of coastal high water levels and changing living marine sources, then requests can be made for up to $1 million per year. And we expect to select a single team proposal in 1 or potentially both of the topical areas. And for more information about this or questions, I'm the contact person on the MAPP side. On the fisheries side, it's Roger Griffith. Okay, so now I'm going to transition to talk about our review process and funding recommendations. So the proposals undergo a two-stage review process, and this is described in detail in the FFO, and it's based on 4 criteria. The first is a stage 2 peer review panel, and this contributes most of the score, the final score of the proposals. And this is to evaluate the scientific and technical merit of the project, and that is 70% of that stage 1 score comes from scientific and technical merit, so that's the biggest part, the biggest contribution towards the score. The second is the qualifications of the team to carry out the proposed work, and that's 20% of the stage 1 score. And then finally, the appropriateness of the budget given the project, that's 10%. So that's for the stage 1 panel, and then for the stage 2 panel, this review panel evaluates the relevance of the program or of the project to MAPP and to NOAA, and that gives 25% of the score. So then with that score, that gives the funding priority for MAPP. It ranks the projects, and that's how we determine which projects to fund based on our budget, our funding availability. We go down that ranking and fund as many as we can. And so conditional on funding availability, which can vary from year to year, generally about 1/4 of full applications are successful. Okay, so what can you expect if you're funded by MAPP, and what can we offer you as program managers? Well, so Dan already talked about, Dan and Rita talked about how we operate a webinar series. So PIs have an opportunity to present their work to a broad community. Through our task force, it's a great platform for communication and collaboration between our PIs. The work of our PIs is promoted on climate.gov and through other outlets. MAPP PIs have the opportunity to organize and lead sessions at relative community meetings, for example, the American Meteorological Society annual meeting. And as already mentioned, we have a quarterly newsletter now, and that's to highlight recent research findings and accomplishments and point you to new opportunities. And then part of the expectation of a MAPP grant is that PIs are required to submit annual and final reports on their projects. Okay, so now we'll transition to the last part of the talk. This is on applying to MAPP competitions, and then it'll also include some tips at the end, and those tips, I think as Dan mentioned already, those are just in tips, or tips based on informal tips based on personal experience over the years. Okay, so where do we start with this? Dan already went through some of this material. The FFO has been published earlier this week. So the FFO is where you can find all kinds of information, including the objectives and priorities of different programs within the Climate Program Office, the expected number, size, and duration of the awards for each program in CPO. You find information on eligibility for applying, the elements that are required in letters of intent, as well as for full applications, all the deadlines you need, the review criteria, which I already mentioned, and the reporting requirements. And Dan mentioned, along with our FFO, we provide information sheets, and this gives all the details of our competitions, and both are a really required reading for applying. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the letter of intent process. So the concept of this is to provide you with feedback on the relevance of your proposed project to our competition. And we strongly encourage you to submit a letter of intent before working through a full proposal, so it's not required that you do that. So here are the elements of an LOI. It's just a short document. It's no more than 2 pages in length. So be sure to identify the competition that you're targeting, provide a tentative project title, provide all the names and institutions of the PIs associated with the project, include a statement of the problem and a summary of the work to be completed. Also, provide the approximate costs of the project and the relevance to the competition being targeted. And so what we'll do when we receive your letter of intent, we'll evaluate it and determine whether a full application based on your LOI is encouraged or discouraged. And if it's encouraged, that means the LOI addresses the required elements of the call. If it's discouraged, it does not address the required elements. And you may also receive a response from us where we say it's marginally encouraged, and that means it hits some of the required elements, but not all of them. So this year, since based on the date that our FFO was published, And the LOI deadline, you can expect our response to your LOI no later than September 23rd. And I want to stress that the LOI evaluation does not include an assessment of scientific merit. That's something that comes as a review stage for the full proposals. We're not attempting to address the merit of the work. It's only to address, or only to see how well it fits the requirements of our particular call. And we're pretty strict about this, that it hits all of the elements that we say are required in our call. It really needs to hit all of those. And we're not going to know specifically about what aspects of your LOI is or is not relevant, so we really leave that to you, based on a response, to go back and kind of compare what you proposed against our competition and what we say we're looking for, our goals, objectives, requirements. And we ask that you refrain from emailing us personally about whether an idea is relevant, because that's really the purpose of the LOI process, that we provide that kind of feedback. Okay, so for elements of the application, I mentioned there are 4 review criteria I already discussed. So this is described in detail in the federal funding opportunity, but this is just a summary. So you need to include a title page that includes the institutions, PIs, the authorized representations for the institutions, and the total funding and the breakdown by institution and by year. The application needs to include a 1-page abstract, and there's some specific information that has to be included in the abstract. The application should include results from the last 3 years of research, and the statement of work, that's the bulk of the proposal. You also need to include a data and information sharing plan. There's a section for the budget table, budget justification, federal forms that are required, and the indirect cost rate agreement. CV, the PI should be included, current and pending funding support, figures and references, and then finally appendices. And again, all the details about what each of these sections mean, page length, all that kind of information is included in the FFO, and that should be read carefully. Okay, so just some other general guidance. Please be sure to be clear about which competition you're targeting and what type of proposal you are submitting, whether it's an individual proposal versus a team proposal. Please refer questions, administrative questions, to Diane Brown. Also want to note that PIs can have the opportunity to request high-performance computing support, and that information, how to do that, that's in our information sheet. And public access to grant or contract-produced data, this is now required as a result of new federal regulations. So you should see your information sheet for details on the required data sharing plan. That involves how to make data available and what data actually need to be made available. Okay, so now I'll turn it back over to Dan to finish off with some tips for replying.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention on that last slide, I forgot to put it in, but for the HPC, you can get in touch with me if you have questions about HPC, and if you have questions about the data requirement, get in touch with the person who's managing that particular competition to which you're applying. Okay, so as Heather mentioned, these tips are informal. They're basically collected from our collective experience with panel reviews and proposals over the last few years, things we've observed, just trying to help everyone get on kind of an equal footing in terms of some of the things that panels tend to look at that can help or hurt proposals that are maybe a little bit outside of what you would assume. And I think this will be particularly helpful for younger proposers who maybe haven't sat on panels before and don't know, exactly how the conversation goes in the panel and the nature of how people pull apart the proposals. So the first tip here is to ensure that your proposal meets the competition goals and requirements. That's really just a very basic thing that we look for. It's evaluated in our Stage 2 panel. And to save you time with potentially submitting a non-relevant proposal, that's why we have the letter of intent process. The letters of intent are pretty brief, and the intention there is for us to get back to you quickly and tell you whether it's relevant. It save you time writing a non-relevant proposal. The second tip is to bring together a strong team of investigators, that the skill and expertise should be complementary between the team members, that it should really cover the elements that are required in the call, or the topical area that you're targeting. Sometimes we do see proposals that have gaps in expertise with the team members who are proposing. And you should really call out what each person's going to do. This is not something that everyone does in their proposals. Usually you'll have a list of tasks, but they should really indicate who's going to do which task and when that's going to happen over the course of the project. That's something that panels really appreciate. The literature review and, in general, the motivation of the proposed research should be very clear and also current. You should convey to the reviewers the context for the work and also demonstrate your expertise and understanding of the current state of the science. Sometimes we receive proposals that have great literature reviews, but the papers are all, very old and out of date and not necessarily always in tune with the most current research in the particular area. And that's something that will, I think, call your qualifications into question as the panel reviews your proposal. So make sure that you have a really nice current expression of the state of the science and motivation. A tip that's an extension of that is to really focus on the proposed work as most of the body of the proposal. Don't spend too much time on background and motivation, just enough that you can get the panelists excited and feeling like there's a good context and need for what you're proposing, but make sure that you don't eat up your proposed work section of the proposal at the expense of giving too much background and motivation. So just a couple more slides with sort of random additional tips. Making your ideas accessible is really important. If you're talking about a methodology that like 4 people in the field know about, you should explain that. We're probably not going to have one of those 4 people on the panel. We are going to have drought experts, experts in all of the areas of the call, but if there's something that's a little bit esoteric that you're proposing, make sure that you explain it well in the proposal so anybody in the area of drought research could have access to what you're trying to do. Make sure there's a clear line between what you've already done and what you're going to do. Sometimes it's not clear in proposals what work has already been completed on other projects, including if you've been funded by MAPP before, and where the line is as to what you're planning to do with this new project. I already mentioned this about your literature review. Make sure that your references are current and focused on the latest papers that inform the work that you're going to carry out. You should address any weaknesses head-on. So sometimes there will be a challenge or weakness in the proposal, and panels tend to like it when they see that the proposer is aware of that potential challenge and has a plan, or at least is cognizant that that challenge lies ahead. That gives a lot of encouragement that the proposer is qualified to try to handle those challenges as they come up. And those can be technical challenges or other challenges. There should be good detail in the proposal in terms of, what specifically you're going to do to accomplish tasks and goals of the proposal. Support letters from other parties can be helpful. Don't go overboard with this, but definitely having a support letter from, an organization if you're planning to do a transition to operations, or a partner organization, or an organization that would feel that the advance that you're going to make in research is going to be particularly helpful to what they're doing. These kind of things can definitely give context and a boost to the motivation for your proposal, and they are definitely noticed by program management and by the reviewers. This next one is about budget. Budget, as Heather mentioned, is evaluated as part of the Stage 1 panel. It is scored and evaluated, and the most important thing with budget is to be realistic about what you can accomplish with the budget. So I think a lot of people think about, make sure that you're not proposing too little work for too much funding. That's, I think, common, but the flip side of that is also equally bad if you're proposing too much work for too little resources. Both of those things are evaluated poorly with the panel. And it ends up also reflecting a little bit on the qualification, because it kind of communicates to the panel that you're maybe not aware of how much you could do within 3 years, or your team could do within 3 years. They really want to see realistic amount of work proposed for the funding level that you're asking for. The last one, if you would like funding to be sent to a NOAA Cooperative Institute, of which there are a handful, please indicate that very clearly on the proposal. Otherwise, we will send it to the university. We will not send it to the Cooperative Institute. So make sure that's on the cover page, in the budget justification, that you want it to go to the Cooperative Institute and not the university affiliated with that Cooperative Institute. Okay. Final slide of tips. If possible, provide a proof of concept. This is not a requirement at all. We're not asking you to do unfunded work before submitting a proposal. but we've observed that panels in the past, if you're proposing a novel idea or something that's very new or less widely known, that if you can show a proof of concept of the technique or approach, it is definitely noticed by the panel and appreciated. Some of these are a little bit basic, but labeling and describing figures. This is one where we get quite a large number of proposals every year where there will be figures without the axes labeled, without units, without a clear identification of what's being plotted, without a clear description below the figure. It seems like basic stuff, but it actually, there are failures in a number of proposals to do this. So please, just make sure these kind of basic things are, well done in your proposal. There should be a good and detailed timeline of the tasks and milestones, and also going back a couple slides, you want to make sure that it's clear who's going to do what with those milestones and tasks. This next one is also very basic, but it's something that we do see often as an issue with proposals. Just making sure that grammar and spelling is good, making sure that the organization of the proposal is well done. As a lead PI, you do have some responsibility to be kind of an editor of the proposal you're sending. So, one thing that we see sometimes is it's very clear that each of the different co-investigators wrote a different portion of the proposal, and then it was just stitched together. So make sure that, you're really editing this and bringing it all together. That's really can be an impediment to understanding to the panel. And grammar and spelling is huge. It definitely has been an impediment in the past to understanding of the work, and you do not want to stand in your own way. A lot of universities have writing help centers. Large universities and their grants offices may help you with the proposal, so please take advantage of that. Make sure the proposals are really targeted to NOAA, CPO, MAPP, and competition goals. Please don't recycle proposals that have been submitted to other agencies or send non-relevant proposals. One issue here is just that you're consuming reviewer time, program manager time, and also your institution's time to submit these. So please be considerate of that. They're not going to be successful if they're not targeted to the competition and relevant. Final tip is no-cost collaborators are great to have on the proposal, but make sure that you've defined what they're going to do on the proposal. What kind of work are they going to perform? What kind of advisory element or role are they going to play? How much time are they going to put into it? What tasks are they going to complete? That kind of thing. So that's it in terms of the content of our 3 presentations. We've already gotten a few questions, and so we're going to switch over to the Q&A session now. As a reminder, please keep submitting questions via the chat feature. The first question that we received was how many Type 1 proposals will be funded in the Drought Competition? And I'll take that one since I'm managing that competition. We're expecting that we're going to be able to fund probably 6 or 7 proposals with some uncertainty. We don't get our FY17 budgets until usually the late winter or early spring of that year. So this will be 2017. And so it's hard to know in advance exactly what the funding levels will be, but based on previous information, we're expecting 6 to 7. And the next couple questions were for Heather. So Heather, if you want to handle those, that would be great. Okay, so the first question is for competition 2, objective 2, it says national scale. What if our project now is just specific codes, but could be scaled to national eventually? Is that acceptable? So this one, I'll say, so the intent of this for these team proposals and the idea of just addressing all 3 objectives and specifically a national scale is that this is intended to provide this research, these research projects are to advance foundational elements of a national information system, either on the topic of coastal high water levels or living marine resources. So yeah, the intent really is for a new prototype for a national system, and I'll just say that the applications part, the products part, certainly can be regional, but we really want something that provides a framework at the national scale that then can go down to the regional scale in terms of products. So the second question, can I submit multiple letters of intent and based on the output decide the main proposal? Sure, yeah, it's possible you can submit letters of intent for different projects, and actually to that, I'll say we can, you can also submit multiple applications. I mean, of course, it's a lot of work to put together full applications, so we don't usually get people that submit more than one, but it has happened. So sure, and that's fine.
course, within reason, and to think about how much information you'll be gaining from submitting, more than, 2 or maybe 3 specific projects. And I don't know if, Dan, you wanted to add to that, and I see you have a couple of questions that have come in for you. You can handle those?
I don't have anything to add to that question. So, yeah, there were a couple other questions which I think are focused more on the drought competition, although, Heather, you might want to weigh in on this one also, but I'll take it first in the context of the drought competition. So the question was, are collaborations with NOAA operational centers, for example, NCEP, allowed and or encouraged? They're definitely allowed and definitely encouraged if it's, an appropriate context for your project, if you're working on an operational system. I mentioned during my talk that there's no requirement to do transitions to operations as part of the drought competition. However, we're very eager and excited about transitions that result from research projects. So this type of transition work with the operational centers is certainly encouraged, both in our climate testbed calls, but also this drought call here. So please, in your proposal, if you are thinking that you're going to work with an operational center and there could be something that will transition to operations, call that out in the proposal. We don't mention that in the info sheet, but that is something that would be good to call out in the proposal. The second, and Heather, did you want to comment on that in the context of your call?
No, it's certainly welcomed for the call that I'm managing. We're specifically thinking about the service goals of fisheries and the ocean service, so those are really, certainly encouraged to coordinate and collaborate with those service offices, but of course if there's a link to the weather service as well, that would certainly be encouraged.
Okay. We got some new questions coming in, so I'm just kind of stacking them up. Bear with me for a few seconds here. Okay, so the next question is, for the drought map solicitation, is there a preference to focus at national, southwestern, or regional scale? So, as I mentioned in the info sheet, we would really like the focus of the drought proposals to be at a national scale, although if there's some relevance, for example, to the drought early warning systems or some type of a regional case study that perhaps could be broadened out to a national scale, that is definitely a relevant proposal to submit. We just don't want to get into the very potentially large world of regional development that's needed in the hydrometeorological prediction area, stream flow prediction, et cetera. We just don't have enough program funds to support that kind of level of work. So definitely some projects that have a national focus are the priority here. The next question is for Heather. Heather, you want to take that one?
Sure. I'm not sure if I fully understand this question, but so it says 6 to 7 type 1 proposals for both drought and seasonal prediction of marine resources. So I think, those are 2 separate calls, so they have their own. And I'm not sure, Dan, is there a specific number of total proposals? You already said
I think for drought, we're probably 6 or 7.
Oh, yeah, so sorry, this is a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Okay, so no, that's just for drought. So no, the second competition, and it's not just seasonal prediction of marine resources, it's also coastal high water levels. But that's, the expectation for that is we'll have a single team proposal in one or potentially both topical areas, and a total of 3 to 5 individual projects, so non-team projects, across both the areas, so covering both the areas, depending. So hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, great. I only have one more question that's come in, and the question was, will the new Drought Task Force 3 leadership come from the Type 2 project? So, as I mentioned, the Drought Task Force is currently in its second phase. After this call is completed and the projects are funded, we will start a third phase of the Drought Task Force. And so the question here is whether the leadership for that Drought Task Force, we usually have 1 main lead and 3 co-leads of the task forces. And the question is whether that will come from the Type 2 project, which is a team project. And the answer to that is, I would say yes, mostly. The leadership for the task force will probably mostly be taken from that Type 2 project, especially I would think the lead PI of that project, potentially. But we will also probably want to involve individuals from the individual projects as well in the leadership of the task force. So it'll probably end up being a mix, but I would think that the Type 2 proposers would be looked at to be the leads of the task force, main candidates for leads of the task force. So that's the last question I've seen so far. Let me check the chat line. Okay, let me, I do have a couple more questions. I'm just going to stack these, and then we'll try to answer these. This first one, I'll take a crack at it first, and then maybe Heather wants to answer in the context of her competition. So the question was, can geographic locations outside of the U.S. also be the topic of research proposals? And in the context of drought, the focus is on North America. So yes, outside of the United States, that's fine, as long as we're still within the North American realm. As I mentioned, with the drought competition, we would like it to be at a national scale, but especially with the team proposal that's going to lead the task force, that we would like a linkage to be made there with the international drought efforts, such as the Global Drought Information System. So just in that kind of narrow band, yes, that can be a link internationally outside of the United States. So hopefully that helps in terms of the drought competition. Heather, I don't know if you wanted to answer this question for your competition.
Sure, yeah. So the first of the three objectives, so that one, since it's looking at modes of climate variability or specific ocean variability that might relate to variations along the coast or that would affect living marine resources, since those can be much broader scale, I mean, to that extent, yeah, if you look at it that way, then it doesn't have to focus, and probably shouldn't just focus on the national scale. It's more of a global perspective on the climate modes of variability that might lend predictability. So, yeah, and then for the third competition, the products that can be produced, or third competition, sorry, thanks, Rita, third objective. So it's just, what we have is stated is that it's prediction products that are tailored to the needs of the National Ocean Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and that should be demonstrated in the proposal. So to the extent that it's relevant to these line offices, then that would be an appropriate, that would give you the regional focus that's acceptable.
And then there's one other question, which I think is also for you, Heather, about competition to.
Right. So I think I just answered.
Oh, you did. Okay.
Well, I didn't. Yeah, didn't realize it was there, but I think I covered that
in your answer to the previous
answer. Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So that's it. Those are all the questions that we've gotten so far. Somebody said thanks for the webinar. It was very helpful. You're welcome. So, Diane, I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add, any guidance or anything. Diane joined us in the room here, which is great.
I don't really have any guidance. I just feel that because no questions came up for me, that the FFO was very well written.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, you have read every word to me.
All right. Well, thanks, MAPP team, for putting this together and doing it. Diane, thank you for joining us, making sure we stay on the rails. And thanks for everybody. We had a pretty good crowd here, so we really appreciate everyone coming, listening in, and we are going to post the recording of this webinar on our website probably early next week, so you can have a chance to look at it again if there's anything you feel you missed. And I think probably another thing we'll do is maybe, I think it would be good to post the Q&A maybe in text on the website also to get some additional answers. So anyhow, thanks everyone for joining. Have a great weekend, and we hope to see letters of intent from you.